should enter here in the normally closed switch, stop switch. Because that switch is closed, I have power here. If I have power here, I can enter that power in the first switch, in the normally open switch for preheat. Okay, it's a purple color. I am going to activate the crank relay. Purple color for the crank relay. And later, when I am going to connect the gauge, oil pressure, temperature, I am going to use other cable from here directly to one ignition bus bar that I am going to use later to connect other elements. This is an ignition bus bar. Right now I have power here, and now if I press the preheat button and I press the start button at the same time, I pass the power through this point and I pass the power to the start relay. Remember, this is 86 and 85. I am going to use the second one for ground in all of them. I am going to use the second one for ground and the first one, 85, in order to activate the relay. Alright, the first relay is activated from the start switch. And the signal that I want to send is coming from this positive bus bar. This positive bus bar is the same like this. It's exactly the same. Alright, I have power here, constant power, constant positive power here, 12 volts, DC. And when I bring the signal, what is the color of this signal? What is the color of this signal? Is yellow, red. Right. What is the procedure to start a diesel engine or diesel generator? You need to press the button for preheat, 10 seconds, and after that, press the start button and keep both buttons pressed. Okay, I am going to press this, and right now I have power here, and right now I press the second one. When I press the second one, I send the signal here, and this power passes over there, and the motor is cranking, and at the same time, I send power to activate the fuel transfer pump and the solenoid of the fuel injection pump, and the engine starts. Right now, the engine starts, and my engine is running. What is the element that when you remove your finger, supply power in order to continue running the engine without your finger? Yes, the alternator. Okay, I start the engine starts, I continue for 10 seconds until the alternator produces power. When the alternator is producing power, I remove my finger and the engine continues running with the power coming from the alternator. Bingo! I want to stop, I press this one, that contactor open, no power here, this connection that right now is closed. If I remove the power, right now is open, I don't have fuel pump, I don't have solenoid of the fuel injection pump, closed, and the engine is stopped immediately. Now we are going to install in this harness the oil pressure switch and the coolant temperature switch. Be careful, my friends. In this corner right now, you have the picture of the oil pressure switch. The oil pressure switch is a normally closed switch. When the temperature of the coolant is below 180, the contacts A and B stay closed. And the people confuse the coolant temperature switch with the coolant temperature sensor. They are different, and we are going to use both of them in this diagram today. The switch is used to interrupt the purple cable and stop the engine. The switch is a switch. It's a normally closed switch that only open in emergency when the temperature pass the limit or when the oil pressure decrease the limit. Both switches. Those are the switches to kill the engine, to stop. The sensors, the oil pressure sensor. Where is located the oil pressure sensor? Yes, in the bracket where the oil filter is located. In temperature. In temperature we have coolant temperature switch and coolant temperature sensor. Where are located those switch and sensor? Both of them are located in the thermostat housing. The thermostat housing that you have in the screen right now is a typical thermostat housing with two holes. One hole for the coolant temperature switch and other hole for the coolant temperature sensor. Once again, the coolant temperature switch is used to stop the engine, to interrupt the purple cable. Okay, I am going to install my oil pressure switch here, and I am going to install my coolant temperature switch here. Both of them, this is coolant switch, coolant temperature switch, and this is oil pressure switch. Both of them are in series with the purple cable. All the gauge, as you can see in the diagram that I have right now on the corner of the screen, all the gauge in the back, they have three terminals. One terminal for ignition, other terminal for signal, and other terminal, normally the middle one, for ground. Three terminals: ignition, signal, and ground. All of them. In this schematic, I draw the temperature gauge with the three terminals. One terminal for ignition, other for ground, and other one for signal. The gauge for fuel, ignition, signal, and ground. The gauge for oil pressure, ignition, signal, and ground. All the ground terminals are connected with the ground, with the negative bus bar. Ground. And this one to ground. And all the ignition positions shall be connected through the ignition bus bar. Normally this cable, the color is purple. And this one connected to the ignition bus bar. And this one connected to the ignition bus bar. And those are the sensors. This is the temperature sensor. Where is located? On the thermostat housing. This is the fuel sensor. Where is located? Inside of the fuel tank. There are different types. Float like this, other one in a vertical, like the picture that you have right now, that work with the pressure difference, and other one electronics. This is the most common, the flow switch. Basically, internally is a resistor. When the tank is empty, maximum resistance. When the tank is full, minimum resistance. Right now I'm going to explain the procedure to check if the gauge are in good conditions or not. The oil pressure sensor normally is bolted on the bracket where the oil filter is located. And normally the oil pressure sensor have two terminals. One terminal for ground and the other terminal to send the signal for the gauge. Exactly with the fuel. The fuel have one for ground, one terminal for ground, and other terminal. Excuse me, what is the color for the oil pressure sensor? The color of the wire for oil pressure, oil pressure, oil pressure. Light blue. Check the color codes that you have in your book. This is light blue. And for the fuel sensor, one is ground and the other one is the signal. What is the color for the signal on the oil, on the fuel sensor? What is the color for the signal? What is the color for the signal? The color is pink. 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 I don't have pink, I am going to use the red one. The tachometer RPMs in the back, they have three terminals. One terminal for ignition, other terminal for ground, and other terminal for signal. Of course, the ignition terminal receives the power from the ignition bus bar. The ground connected to the ground. And the signal is an AC, alternating current, AC signal coming from the output of the alternator. Remember, the alternator in the first stage produces AC power, and after that the AC current is rectified on the bridge of diodes into DC. And the other element that we need to connect right now is the hour meter. The hour meter has two terminals, one negative connected to the negative bus bar, and other one positive. Where do you think should be connected the positive of the hour meter? No. To the ignition position on the ignition switch? No, because if you have the ignition switch on, the hour meter is counting, and that's not good. You wanted to add more hours to your engine or to your generator? No. Yes, the positive should be connected to the output of the alternator. Only when the alternator is producing power, the hour meter is moving. You have a problem with the oil pressure gauge. It's not moving. You need to know if the problem is the gauge, or if the problem is the sensor, or if the problem is the wire, the sender, the signal. The majority of the problems with instruments, with gauge, is bad ground. The ground is loose. The ground is corroded. This is the most common problem. The second one is improperly terminals, loose terminals, corroded terminals. With power on ignition, you disconnect the signal and you make a jumper in between signal and ground, and immediately the needle should be pointed to full. When you remove the connection, immediately the needle returns to empty or zero. That's the procedure to check if the problem is the gauge.